All right, so let us go back to rounding and get our rounding brains ready. So we've been practicing rounding to the nearest tenth, rounding to the nearest hundred. And in doing that, we've talked about lots of strategies, right? We've talked about, first of all, the pictorial that I created for you, right? When we talk about rounding, we talk about identifying the place, going to the right. If it's 5 or bigger, you round up. If it's 4 or less, you let the place rest. We talked about lots of examples. We also used things like number lines. We talked about base 10 blocks and modeling that. You all talked about how you like to see it in different ways, and many of you use different ways to understand the concept of rounding. So today, guess what? We're just going to keep practicing this, and we're going to keep looking at these strategies and looking at the different ways that we could approach it. So again, my friends, is there one exact way to do it? No. Are you going to be exposed to lots of ways? Sure. But I want you to do what you're comfortable with. Do you need to practice the different ways? Yes, you do. And that's what we're going to be doing today. So on page 15, you are going to see that it's one question. This is the one with the school bus on it, right? And you can see this right here. And you will see that this is one question. Okay? It's one question. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to project this page up so that you can see it. And then we're going to talk about ways that we could solve it. So here we go. Okay, everyone. So this question here, and I'm going to be reading right, I'm going to start reading right where my pen is. And I'm sorry, there's a little bit of a delay. Internet is a little bit slow this morning. So up here on page 15, it's talking about there are 236 third graders at Huron Elementary School. What is 236 rounded to the nearest 100? So I want to circle back for just a moment and remind you all of our close reading strategies, because remember, a lot of what we do in math is reading and comprehending or understanding what the question is asking us. And remember, we talked about how we are only answering questions that are being asked of us. In order to do that, we need to understand what the question actually is. So I'm seeing, if we go back to our cube strategy, and again, that pictorial is on my website. CUBES is an acronym, C-U-B-E-S. I want to circle the important number right there, 236. That is the number that I am going to be working with right now. I'm also seeing that the question is asking me to round, and it's asking me to round to the nearest 100. Okay, and I'm actually going to box 100 to help my brain. So if we were to use the pictorial that I showed you, and again, it's this one here. It's this one here. You can see my little tiny square right now, again, on my website. If I write down the number 236, I have to remind my brain that I am rounding to the nearest 100. So I am going to identify the place to which I am rounding. From there, my next step would be to go next door. And I'm going to the tens place. And our pictorial says that if it's 5 or bigger, we add 1 more or we round up. If it's 4 or less, we let it rest. So based on the pictorial, the 236 is going to round to 200. Now, there are ways that you could model that as well. We talked about number lines. There's another strategy that you could use, and it's what we call a hill strategy, right? It's a hill strategy. I can show you what that looks like as well. So what we would do is we would draw something that looks like this, right? Almost looks like a little mountain, if you will. Okay? And with that, we need to determine which 2 hundreds that we're talking about, between which 2 hundreds. So we would know that 236 would be between 200 and 300, right? So like the beginning of our hill, the end of the hill, right? And then we talked about the importance of that halfway mark, the importance of the halfway mark. So for us here, it would be 250. If this was a straight number line, that would be the middle. Okay? Again, remember our rules. If next door it's 5 or more, we are rounding up. But let's take a look at where 236 would fall on our hill. 236 would fall right about here. So based on our hill, we would definitely be rounding down because it is closer to 200 than it is to 300. Does everyone see that? Again, this number is closer to 200 than it is to 300. Even if we were to straighten this out and use a number line, which we could, 200 being here, 300 being on the other side, the halfway mark being 250, and then plotting or placing 236, the number that we're working with, on the number line. So as you can see, this number line is the same as our hill, just straightened out. So what I've basically done is I've taken our hill here and I've just gone, and I just stretched it and I made it flat. That's all I did. I just took our hill and I just went, and I just straightened it out. Okay? There are other ways that you could model this. You could use base 10 blocks as well. So another way you could look at the number 236 is to actually model that number. So you could take, here's 100, and we're going to just pretend that we have base 10 blocks all scattered in front of us on our desks right now, okay? So here's 100, and here's 100. And then we need to talk about 30, right? So here's 10, here's 10, and here's 10. So that's 30. But then we can't forget about our 6 ones. So this here is a model of the number 236. That's the model. So you can see, my friends, that what I'm doing here is showing you a number of different ways that this question could be answered. Everything that I'm modeling here is representing 236. If we look at the base 10 model, the question remains the same. We need to round 236. So we're definitely going to be looking at the 200 place. This and this is the same as this. 200. In order for me to round, I need to look at the place next door. So I'm going to look at my friends over here, the 3 10s in the model, and it's clearly 4 or less. So the rounding is down to 200. Many, many different ways that we could model this. Thumbs up if you're seeing the models. Thumbs up if you're seeing it. Thumbs up if it's making some sense to you. Excellent. Okay. Oh, Jerry, I'm seeing that confident thumbs up. Love it. Thank you. Okay. So with that, what I'd like to do is I'd like you to turn to page 16. I'd like you to turn to page 16. And what you can see on page 16 is what we've just talked about. If you take a look at the top of page 16, it's taking that same number, 236. It's asking you to picture it with base 10 blocks, which is what we just did. Certainly not in such a fancy, pretty way on page 15, but that's definitely what we did. It's talking about, if you see down at the solve it, it's talking about using what you know about rounding, talking about the halfway point and how important that is. Everything we did on page 15 is here on page 16. All right? Thumbs up if that makes sense and that you're seeing that. Excellent. Okay, so please turn to page 17 in your book. Please turn to page 17 in your book. Now, up at the top, it's giving us another question to answer. It's saying at the top of 17, now you will use the problem from the previous to help you understand and how to solve a new problem involving rounding to the nearest 100. So it's asking you to round 358 to the nearest 100. Now, what I'd like to do is I'm going to come back together so I can see all of you, and we're going to talk about that page. You all should have it in front of you. I like being able to see all of your faces. So, question 1 on page 17. It is asking you to identify which two hundreds this number falls between. So 358 falls between which two hundreds? Who would like to take it? Who would like to take it? Which two hundreds does it fall between? And nod, good morning, go ahead.
300 and 400.
Beautiful, thank you. Between 300 and 400. Perfect. Now, what digit is in the tens place? What digit is in the tens place? And remember that this is the number. This is the number we're looking at. Which digit is in the tens place? Isis, go ahead.
50.
Which digit? Not the value, I'm just looking for the digit. Which digit?
Tens place.
Just tell me what the digit is.
The tens place.
But what is the digit? What number do you see?
5.
Perfect. Thank you. 5. It's the 5. That is the number in the tens place. So the next question, number 3, what number of tens is halfway between hundreds? What number of tens is halfway between hundreds? Bigger question, how many tens does it take to make 100? And what's the halfway point? What is the halfway point? A nod, go ahead.
50.
You're giving me the actual value, but thank you for that, but what I need to know is how many tens does it take to go to the halfway point?
5.
5. Thank you. It's 5. So on number 3, what number of tens is halfway between hundreds? 5. Why is it 5? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. That is 5 tens. 5 tens. Very good. All right. Let's take a look at number 4. What is 358 rounded to the nearest 100? What is this number rounded to the nearest 100? Again, we could draw our hill. We could use base 10 blocks. We could take our hill and stretch it out to a number line. We could refer to my pictorial. Lots of different things you could do. 358 rounded to the nearest 100. We've identified the place, which is trying to do this upside down. We are rounding to the nearest 100. We go next door. If it's 5 or bigger, we add 1 more. 4 or less, we let it rest. 358 rounded to the nearest 100. And it is, Isis, go ahead.
400.
It is 400. Thumbs up if you see that. 400. Yep. Nice job. Nice job. Make sure you are putting these solutions in on page 17. Now take a look at page 18. I want you to turn to page 18. And this is what it's looking like. This is what it's looking like, friends. Okay? Page 18. So I'm going to reshare my screen so you can see it a little bit better. And this is what we're looking at right now. All right, so question 7 on page 18 is saying, what is 476 rounded to the nearest 100? And show your work. So again, going back to those close reading strategies, I need to remind my brain of what's important in this question. I know that I am going to be working with the number 476. I do know that I am rounding. That is a super important word. And the question is actually asking me rounding to the nearest 100. That's what I know I'm doing. 476 rounded to the nearest 100. I am going to identify my place. I am going to look next door. If it's 5 or bigger, I'm adding one more. I could also use a strategy such as my hill. I could draw my hill. And I know that 476 is somewhere between 400 and 500. I know that my halfway point is 450. So 476 would fall somewhere around here, which is certainly much closer to 500 than it is to 400. And I'm going to give you a minute to write all that down too. And then we're going to come back together. Give me a quick thumbs up when you have it written down. Perfect. Thank you. All right, I'm going to stop the share so we can come back together again. How are you all doing? How are you all doing? Quick thumbs up here. Excellent. If you have a question or you want me to clarify something during instruction, by all means, please ask. Please ask. It's what I'm here for. I'm here to help and I'm here to support you. So let me know if there is anything you need clarified. I do love the question 8 on your page 18. And it's talking about rounding to the nearest 100. Does everyone see that? Quick thumbs up. What numbers less than 100 would round to 100? Who remembers our question yesterday? Where we were able, Friday, my apologies, Friday, where we were trying to find numbers that would round up or round down. And there were multiple correct answers. It's the same thing here. So who can give me a number that is less than 100 that would round to 100? A number that's less than 100 that would round to 100. I'm seeing Ellie. I'm seeing that confident hand. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
96.
96. And Ellie, I'm going to challenge you. Are you ready for the challenge? I think you can do it. Can you explain to me why it rounds to 100? Why 96 would round to 100?
96 would round to 100 because 4 4 or less, you let it rest. 5 or more, you like round up. You go next door.
Excellent. That is excellent. Thank you so much for sharing, Ellie. Beautiful. I'm loving the complete sentences and I'm loving the detail. 96 rounds up to 100 because when you take the place next door and realize that it is 5 or more, you are rounding up. Beautiful job. Beautiful job.